this hour will be recorded for those who can't make it, and they will present themselves to you. And please mute your mics and keep the questions till the end and write it on the chat, and we'll answer all the questions at the end. Go on, Carrie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aisha. And we express the gratitude for having us here and for allowing us to be presenting our program to so many people on this Zoom. I think there's a few pages of you guys, so very nice to meet you all. I know we can't see you guys in person or see your faces, but on behalf of Dino and I, we're really, really excited to be here and talk about Mind Up and the importance of social emotional learning and mindfulness-based programming in schools, classes, and even at home. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen, and then Dino and I will start with some introductions. So can everyone see my screen? Or I guess Dino and Aisha, can you answer?
Yes,
Great.
yes, we can.
Okay, so great. So we'll start with some introductions. But again, I would like to say thank you, Aisha and eduline, because we're really excited about this partnership and know that together we can do some great things across the Middle East and Egypt region, and we're just really, really excited to be here. But my name is Carrie Patterson. I am the managing director of the Goldie Hawn Foundation, which is signature program is Mind Up. And I'm located out of Toronto, Canada, believe it or not, even though our organization is based and our head office would be out of California in the United States. And I'll pass it over to Dito.
Hey, I'm Dito. Oh, so I'm so grateful to be here, because to me, the technology that we are using to be with each other right now is like magic. So when I think about mindfulness, I think about magic essentially, which is how can people from different countries at the same time, Carrie in Toronto, some in Egypt, some in different countries, me in Florida, come here around one thing, which is how can we understand how our brain works to help our kids, so the kids can actually develop their characters and change the way they view the world and view themselves. And being able to do it this way across like 5,000-6,000 miles, to me is like magic. So I am grateful to everybody who chose to come here and give us this hour. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Innovation, and I can't wait to get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Dito. So Aisha did a great job at the very beginning of this presentation in regards to why mindfulness and why social emotional learning. But we have this great video that we just thought would, let us ground ourselves into who we are and why today Mind Up is so important for our students. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Just play it. Yes.
Oh, sorry. So that just shows, as you read that, the importance is critical. And I just want to introduce our founder, who many of you probably know her, you may not, but it is Goldie Hawn. And the reason why it's important, because in talking about Goldie Hawn right after that video, is she started this organization almost 20 years ago after 9/11. And her hope was always to develop a program that no matter where you were in the world, that this program would be. And so this is like a dream come true if Goldie was on the call today, that we were actually presenting to multiple countries on the other side of the United States, because that was always her vision, is that the world needs us now more than ever, was after 9/11, when increased stress, increased anxiety, increased suicides rates, and that just troubled her. And she wanted to do something good in this world. And that's where, she created the Goldie Hawn Foundation and the Mind Up program. And now we're almost 20 years later, and we're at the global pandemic, and we're experiencing the exact same thing where you're seeing increased anxiety, increased stress, increased suicide rates. And, the data that's out there that UNICEF has recently put out is just, it's shocking and it's devastating. And so for us, it's our job to do something about it. And that's why we're here to talk to you guys about Mind Up. And so it was always Goldie's vision to build resilience, build optimism, build the skills, empathy, and compassion to thrive in today's world and build that mental stability and mental fitness. And we're just, like I said, 20 years later, and here we are speaking to all of you, knowing for the common good of our youth. And that's why we're all here. It's about how do we change the trajectory in life? And how do we do that is we have to start with our youth and give them the skills and the knowledge to be better and to improve their mental health through understanding, as Dito said, their brain, understanding their brain and how they can, what they can do to better themselves. So we're in, Dito's going to get into this a little bit more detail, but the one thing that we always say when we talk about it, we're not just a social emotional learning program. We're not just a mindfulness based program. We ground ourselves in the science, in the recent science, and we really do ground ourselves with neuroscience and put that at the backbone of who we are as an organization and how we build our curriculum and how we build our activities and how we build our training. And so that's really important, but Dito will get into that in a little bit more detail. And quickly, if you're wondering why Mind Up, we actually started our research 20 years ago when we developed Mind Up. So we knew that, and it was Goldie's vision, that we would not take this into schools until that the research was proven. And so, almost 20 years later, we have over 10 different research projects around the world that we've done, from Uganda, Africa, to Portugal, to United Kingdom, to Canada, to United States, where we've done these research to see the impact. And here's just a couple, and I know you guys can read the slides yourselves, but better stress regulation as assessed by the stress hormone cortisol. So we are actually testing both kids and the students through, this is going to be funny, but through cortisol, which is essentially a spit test. So you can actually see the change in both teacher stress decrease as well as the kids stress decrease as well. Improve student outcomes. So when you're thinking about why mental health, how does that, a lot of people think test scores, but we have to take care of the mental health first of our students. And what you'll see when you do that is that their test scores and their academics will actually improve. More pro-social, trustworthy, and liked by their peers. Enhanced tools and strategies for self-regulation and self-management, and increased optimism, happiness, and resilience, which, if you think about it, these are all things we're hoping for our children. Here's just another way of looking at the data. So you can see when we were talking about academic performance, you can see increase 15% in math proficiency, 24% decrease in aggressive behaviors, and 20% in social emotional skills. And the data goes on, and this just shows that we don't just do the research in the United States, that we really do try to go out there and ensure that we're doing research on an annual basis all around the world to prove that this program is working and ensure that we're putting the latest research and we're continuing to improve our program based on that. And with that, that is our beginning. And I'm going to pass it to Dito, who's really going to get into the nuts and bolts of our program and really talk about how it's built, the programming and the curriculum. So over to you, Dito.
Thanks, Carrie. And the first thing I want to say is that the reason why those test scores and pro-social behaviors are going up is because the kids' brains are already designed to have the resources to do well on tests, to have pro-social behaviors, et cetera, et cetera. But the things that happen outside to stress them out are the reasons why it becomes difficult to do well on a test, for example. It's not because they can't learn. Every single child can learn. Every single child can have pro-social behaviors. It's just that when they don't understand what is happening outside of the world that triggers the inside, then they don't know how to regulate that. So what Mind Up does is it teaches the teachers and the parents and the kids themselves, here's how your brain works, and here's how you can use your brain to be productive. And this is what you can do to avoid the things that don't help you. So the way that I got into mindfulness was I was a teacher myself. And I taught students who were struggling with behavior and with like a lot of issues at home in their neighborhood. And I was thinking about how can I create the kind of classroom environment where no matter what happens outside of the classroom, things they don't control, when they come into my class, how can I create the perfect environment for them to be kids, for them to feel joy, for them to learn? And then in my research, I realized that a brain that is happy and healthy can learn better, right? Think about it. Think about the last time that you were very sad, very upset, and somebody comes and gives you something to read. That's challenging. Or if I ask you to do a math problem when you're hungry, how is your brain going to feel? First, the brain wants to be happy and healthy, then you can do well. So that's how I got into mindfulness myself. And the first pillar of Mind Up is neuroscience. And that's what differentiates us from most programs out there, which is everything that we teach kids and teachers starts from how the brain works. There's always that question of why. We don't want anybody to get into mindfulness by accident and not understand why they are able to feel the way they feel and do the things they do. And the reason why that's important to us is because our goal ultimately is the following. We would like every single kid in the world to have the tools to take this knowledge outside of the class so that when they have a stressful situation at home, in the neighborhood, on the playground, they themselves alone can understand what's happening and self-regulate. So we start with the teachers and have activities in class, but the goal is, hey, kid, if you can get to a point where when the adult is not there, and you can actually recognize these triggers and how to self-regulate, that's the best thing. So that's why we start with the neuroscience. And we also dig deep into the neuroscience because we realize that kids any age actually can understand how the brain works. They can. People used to wonder, but could kids that young understand what's up with the brain? Yes, they can. And you're going to hear some kids in a couple of slides share themselves what they've learned about the brain and how they've used that. So that's our first pillar, neuroscience. Our second pillar is positive psychology. And I know many of you guys have experience with this. But again, what makes Mind Up different is that we look at positive psychology from a neuroscience perspective. So here's a simple way to think about positive psychology. We know that there are good things that happen to you and bad things that happen to you. We know that. But we also know that our brains are designed to focus only on the negative and not on the positive. If we rewire your brain to deploy perspective taking so you can learn to focus on the positive as well, you start to actually rewire your brain, right? What does that look like, for example? It looks like if every morning when you wake up, if the first thing that you do is take your cell phone and get on social media and read about all the negative news that are happening in your country, in your city, and in the world, you're priming your brain for negativity. That's going to impact the way your entire day goes because your brain is primed to see negative, 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 negative. What we're saying is you can do that, or you can find a way to prime your brain for positivity so that as well as the negative, you see positive. And the more you do it, the studies show about 21 days, but I always encourage to do more. The more you start to rewire your brain for positivity. And we've seen that kids learn how to solve conflicts when they learn about the psychology. So for example, if a kid has a conflict with a classmate, we go through an exercise in positive psychology where they go from the worst case scenario, the best case scenario to the most likely case scenario. And we explain to them how your brain needs to give attention to the worst case scenario first, because that's how your brain is designed. But after you've done that, step two, push your brain to go into the best case scenario, brainstorm that. And by the time you get into thinking about the most likely case scenario, your emotional brain, which is your amygdala, has actually had the chance to calm down. And now you can think more rationally. And I'm going to share a little more about that. But that's one example of an exercise that we do with kids when we teach positive psychology. Mindfulness, like Carrie said, this is our third pillar. So it's an important part of who we are, but it's not the only one. And mindfulness means many things, but one of the simplest ways to think about mindfulness is, are you able to be present in the moment in what you're doing while being non-judgmental of yourself and of others, right? Again, are you able to be present in the moment in what you're doing and be non-judgmental of yourself and of others? And the question that I always encourage people to ask themselves and others, if they think about how mindful they are, is my body where my mind is? And the reason why you ask that question is not so that you can like punish yourself if you get the answer is no. If my body is not my mind is, oh, I'm such a bad person. No, it's just a question designed to trick your brain to remember that we are bombarded by signals, advertisement, marketing, cell phone notification, things that want our attention to go away everywhere but here. So when you ask yourself that question, am I where is my body where my mind is? It triggers you to actually check with yourself and see if you're here. And we know from research that human beings aren't designed to be multitaskers. There may be 2 or 3 professions in the entire world that actually require real multitasking. One of them is air traffic controllers, people who have to actually coordinate all the planes flying. Like they have to be multitasking. But because of that, they always work in groups and they have short working periods and then they take breaks because it's not good for your brain to have 12 windows open in your computer, your cell phone beeping next to you. You have a smartwatch that's sending you notifications. You think about what happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's the pandemic. Like all those things aren't healthy for your brain. And if this is difficult for you to grasp, think about this to me. Think about one time when you were trying to park your car and you had music, but without knowing why, you turned down the volume from the car so you could park your car. And you might have done that without thinking about it. But if you stop and wonder, why is it that you feel the need to turn down the volume so you can park your car? And it's because your mind is reminding you that, your brain is reminding you, your biology is reminding you that you are better at doing one thing at a time, as opposed to all these things at the same time. Sometimes even just like texting and walking, you can't do it because you're like, okay, hold on, I have a thought. And you want to finish that just because your brain wants you to focus here and now. And the more the kids do that, the more they increase their self-awareness, they increase their self-regulation, and then they're able to do things like Kerry mentioned it earlier with the data, perform better on tests, have more pro-social behaviors, and be less aggressive. So that's mindfulness, which is our third pillar. Our fourth pillar is social and emotional learning. And this is one where for a long time in education, the emphasis has been on IQ, right? IQ and all these tests, all these content focused in specific skills. But we know now that in order to actually determine how fulfilled and successful a child is going to be, it's not just about the IQ, it's about the EQ as well, the emotional quotient, right? If you are able to have emotional awareness, empathy towards other people, if you aren't able to read somebody's facial expression, if you don't have any empathy, sympathy, it's difficult to actually evolve and be fulfilled. So it's not just about the hard data on the IQ, it's also about the EQ. And the way in which we teach social and emotional learning to teachers and to kids is to think about themselves as whole and holistic beings. You aren't just one person who has one job to do, which is teach. You aren't just one person who has one thing to do, which is learn. You're a whole being with filled with experiences. And we need to take into account that holistic aspect of who you are in order to better teach you. When I taught my students in downtown Miami here, I had to think about them as people who were holistic beyond my classroom. Once I did that, I was able to understand why when they got to my class, maybe I gave them a book to read or a test to take and they were not ready. Why? Because of the outside, because of what happened yesterday, what happened this morning, what happened on the way to school. And once I tapped into those things that made them holistic outside of my class, then I was able to create an environment in my class that catered to who they were and they felt more comfortable being with themselves and with each other. And that's how at the end, those test scores out as well were able to go up. Kerry, I think you still control the slides. Um, so we have 4 units, and so and if you look at all the units, They start from the brain and they kind of expand into mindfulness and mindset, and then go into not just being mindful and looking at me inside, but looking at the world. We teach kids to go from me to we. So if you want to change the world, you start by changing yourself. And from yourself to your classroom, to your school, to your community, to the world. But every single one of those units still connects back to neuroscience, right? It's a theme throughout everything that we do. We have the neuroscience. So let's take a deeper look into what the lessons actually look like in the units. So in the first unit, as you will notice, those first 4 lessons are all focused around the brain. The first lesson is about creating a community of learning. And the reason why that matters is, think about it. If you start school and the first day you meet the kids, you give them a math test or a science test. I mean, like, these kids may not know each other. They may not know you. They may not feel comfortable in your classroom. They may not know your procedures. They may not know how to ask a question. They may not feel comfortable. So the first step before any content is ever taught, and I've always done this when I taught, is to create a community of learning, right? How do we get to know each other, feel comfortable, so our brains can kind of lower that defense mechanism so we can actually learn. And then you go into your most important lesson for Mind Up, which is my amazing brain. How can we teach the kids how to understand their brain? Once we dig into that, we then take from what we learned about the brain to understand what mindfulness means and how we can be mindful using the brain knowledge. And then that 4th lesson is our signature core practice, which is the brain break, which is essentially a way in which we teach the kids to go from an overexcited emotional brain, a stressful brain, into a calm brain, a productive, a focused brain in like 2 to 3 minutes, right? And we're all going to practice that at some point today. So that's the first unit. And we are going to show you a brief video where kids are going to talk about their brain. But before we do that, we want you to understand why it matters to us that kids know like how their brain works. Once you understand how your brain works, especially when it comes to neuroplasticity, you understand that you control your brain. You are in charge of your brain. All the things your brain does automatically make it seem as if you have no choice and no control. But no, even if you've done something for 10, 15 years, every single day, the good news is through neuroplasticity, you can actually rewire your brain. And when we've taught kids about neuroplasticity, they felt so empowered because they realized that they don't have to be stuck by the practices that they're all used to. They can change from good to great, from bad to good, etc., etc. And one note that I always share with teachers is, look, if you have a student in your class who, anytime there's stress, anything stressful happens, maybe they yell or scream or push somebody, one thing you have to consider is this. Let's say that this kid is 15, 15-year-old. It is very possible that for the past 7 years of their life, based on the environment, based on social media, based on trauma, their brain has learned that the way to deal with stress is by pushing somebody. The way to deal with stress is by yelling, is by fighting. It's not an intentional thing. Like, the brain has literally changed to feel like this is how I handle this. So that's good news. That's good news because, one, it doesn't mean they're a bad kid. It just means that neuroplasticity works. But 2, it means that you can actually unpack that and learn and relearn. You can rewire that brain into understanding that when there's a stressful situation, here are 2 or 3 different ways you can do that. And the more you reinforce that, the more the brain actually changes. And when you change your brain, you then change the way you think and the way you feel, then you can change the way you act. And it's powerful to see kids kind of live that. Now we're going to watch a video about what kids have to say about the brain and the brain break. Carrie, you're muted.
You can't hear it?
Now, okay, now we can. So go back because you were muted.
It helps me because whenever I get angry,
the children are able to stop and think a little bit more.
if somebody's trying to like annoy me, I usually do the brain break. I'm more calm, it just takes my mind off it. The brain break is when the teacher reads out a couple of steps and everyone closes their eyes, and when we hear the chime, we're supposed to open our eyes and look to the front of the room and smile. A brain break is really good to me because if I'm having a bad day, it just takes my mind off it. Yeah, it does, because usually when we come back from class, especially in my class, when we come back, we always talk about what happened in playtime, how I'm not going to talk to this person, I'm not talking to you. It's like in your brain, when you do it, it like unlocks your mind ready for learning. It feels like you feel really calm from when you're angry. When we do brain break, we're all silent and we just forget about everything that happened in playtime. And sometimes you feel like you're ready to learn. And we just focus on learning.
Thinking about self-regulation, some children need to have the power to be able to understand why they're feeling like that. There's nothing wrong with being angry, but going from 0 to 100 really quickly, you need to be able to bring yourself back down.
We can empower them, and even if they don't have the best role model, they have that knowledge, and then we can start making a change, not just within our school, but hopefully the community.
So they'll say, you know, this is how I was feeling before what happened took place, and after a little bit of thought, I'm able to now kind of approach things in a little bit of a different way.
The children are a lot happier, and everybody in the class understands that there's nothing wrong with someone being upset.
I can see that other people are like, their minds are just like learning, and it's not something else. Like if they were having a bad day, so it makes me feel more happy.
So that's the key part here. It's about making sure that the children are informed, they know why they're feeling the way they are, and the children around that situation are feeling less anxious.
Thank you, Terry. And those were some kids talking about their brain, and you noticed that those kids were really young because we wanted to show that kids all age understand the brain. But this is for all ages. I taught high school, and I taught the same skills and tools. And the first lesson that I taught and that we teach with MindUp after creating a community of learning is about the brain. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the actual lesson we teach the kids about the brain. So the first thing is, of course, the brain is extremely complicated. You have like billions of neurons, but we simplify to these three parts of the brain so the kids and the teachers can actually have a common language to understand how the brain works and how to self-regulate. The first part of the brain we teach them is the amygdala, and this is your emotional center. This is the part of your brain that's in charge of your feelings and your emotions, but it's also the most primitive, the oldest part of your brain that plays a huge role into your survival and your defense mechanism. And this is the one that has become associated with the fight, flight, freeze response. I'm sure you've heard of this before. This is the part of your brain that just reacts. When something happens to you from the outside in, your brain reacts, fight, flight, freeze. And that looks like many different things. I have a pen right here, issue in front of me, and I looked at you, and without warning, I threw the pen at you. You would do one of three things, guaranteed. You would either hit the pen like this, there would be a classic fight response from your amygdala. You might duck and dodge without knowing why you're doing it, that would be a flight response. Or you might just stare at me and stare at the pen until it gets close and close and close and close to your nose. And that's a classic freeze response. And the reason why we start by teaching those three parts of those three responses is because they are responsible for most quote unquote misbehaviors, most stressful situations, and most conflicts that kids and adults encounter. And the reason why that is the case is that while these are useful when it comes to defending you and protecting you and you evolving, they are very dangerous today because your amygdala does not understand the difference between a perceived danger and a real danger. So to your amygdala, everything is life or death, right? Everything. So a kid having a bad grade on a test, the amygdala feels like this is life or death. A kid not having their favorite toy, the amygdala feels like it's life or death. You refusing to give them candy or cookies or a snack, the amygdala is there. It feels like it's life or death. And that's dangerous, because then the more the amygdala is triggered, the more it feels like it's in a life or death situation, the more stressed the person is, and the more extreme their response might be in fight, flight, freeze. Think about fight, flight, freeze in a different way, not just like a literal way. Have you ever had a student who you knew that they were one of your best students, they knew how to answer all the questions, how to read, how to write, how to do math, and yet the second you give them the test and you say 3, 2, 1, go, they can't move, they can't think. Like the ideas just don't come anymore. They stare at you. This used to happen to my students, especially when they were doing presentations. Like, okay, it's your turn. No matter how much they had practice, when they stand up and want to start presenting, they stare. That's a classic freeze response on your amygdala, because your amygdala looks at the people in front of you, feels judged, and starts to wonder what's going on and feel like it's dangerous, and then bam. The truth is, nobody in front of you is judging you so harshly that it's like a life or death situation. It's not. Your teacher, your classmate, they're encouraging you. And even the few ones that might not be encouraging you, the consequences aren't that severe, but your amygdala doesn't understand that. That's a classic freeze response. What think about another way to another way in which the amygdala works in the classroom. When the kid tends to avoid tests or exams or difficult tasks, the second you say that we're going to start working right now, they say, "Okay, I got to go to the bathroom. Can I go to the bathroom? Or can we do this? Can we do that?" They always want to do something else. That's a classic flight response. Instead of dealing with a conflict, the stress response of the amygdala is, let's run away. And the fight could look like many different things. There might be some kids who, anytime you want to start doing something that seems stressful to them, they start arguing with you. They start arguing with people. They start insulting people. They start wanting to fight with you verbally. That's a classic fight response. Once you understand that those three categories can explain almost everything when it comes to kids and adults' behaviors, that's very empowering, because you have the why. And once you have the why of the behavior happening, then you can move on to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain which is in charge of impulse control, in charge of learning new skills, in charge of higher order thinking, in charge of making good decisions, or determining what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. That's that part of your brain that you want the kids to engage all the time. But unfortunately, what we now know is that when your amygdala takes over your brain, your prefrontal cortex doesn't work as well. It starts to kind of dim like this. It's like the more the amygdala goes up, the prefrontal cortex goes down. And then you have a certain ratio where you can't think anymore. So the kid who to you want them to read or to do math or to do science or to present, they need the prefrontal cortex. But if the stressful situation makes the amygdala goes here, then the thinking doesn't happen anymore. And this is the same thing that happens to even you as an adult when you are stressed and you are asked to do something difficult under stress. It's almost like you can't think anymore. And sometimes you have a situation that's stressful, and maybe 20 minutes later you say, what was I thinking? But sometimes you were not thinking, right? Because your brain was triggered into going to fight, flight, freeze mode. Like, so when somebody honks aggressively at you when you're driving, like, your brain just goes like, and sometimes you respond in a way that's fight. Maybe you may want to like fight them verbally or even physically, but that's how your brain works. So you stop thinking because your brain was triggered. So once the kids understand that, they know, oh, okay. So the reason why I act this way when something bad or stressful happens is because my brain is designed to work that way. And if I want to get into the thinking part of my brain, I can do a brain break like those kids were sharing, for example, and I can bring it down so the PFC can do its job. It's really, really powerful. And the third part of the brain we teach the kids is the hippocampus, which is in charge of your long-term memories as well as your spatial awareness. And the kids learn that this is where they store their experiences. And I like the word store because you can access those experiences anytime, right? We train them to access their positive memories to bring a positive feeling to the brain. So there are multiple creative ways in which our curriculum tells the teachers how to teach these parts of the brain. So it's fun. for the students, and so that they could remember. But the signature practice, again, is the brain break, which is how we calm the amygdala down. And we are going to practice one right now today, even though we're here virtually. So this is what I want you to do. We're going to take like 2-3 minutes to do this. Let me make sure I have my stopwatch ready. This is what I want you to do. If you're sitting down, even though I can see you, try to see if you can have your feet flat on the ground. Just kind of feel your feet flat on the ground. Try to have your back straight if you can. And what we are going to do is going to do some mindful breathing. It'll be a deep breath, breathing, inhaling through the nose. And you're going to exhale either through the nose or the mouth. It's up to you. But try to exhale long. So inhale, feel your belly when you inhale. Don't inhale from the chest. Inhale from the belly. And then follow me with the chime, and we'll see how this goes. So again, put your feet flat on the ground. Back straight if you can. I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, that's okay. Focus on something else. And take your first deep inhale. Exhale. Do it again and focus on the sound of the chime. Here we go. Deep inhale. Try to exhale for about twice as long as you inhale. So if you inhale for a count of 1, 2, try to exhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. If you inhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, try to exhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See how that goes. As you continue to inhale, filling your belly and exhaling, you may notice that your mind is wandering and you are distracted, or there are some noises that are coming to your mind. If that's the case, that's perfectly fine. That's okay. Acknowledge those distractions and those noises for like 1 second, and then let them be where they are. And then bring your focus back to inhaling and exhaling.
Questions to be answered, يعني short answer.
Again, if you hear any noise, just acknowledge and come back to breathing. Now, I want you to check in with your back. If your back is tense and if your shoulders are tense, when you exhale and release any tension you might have on your back or your shoulders. On the next exhale, if there's any tension on your neck or your jaw, make sure you exhale and release any of those tensions. Make sure you're not frowning. Make sure your eyebrows are also relaxed. And keep on breathing. And you're going to hear the chime one more time. Listen to it for as long as you can. And when you can't hear the chime anymore, you're going to take 2 or 3 more deep breaths. And then you're going to come back to us. Thank you for being mindful. That was about 3 minutes. So this is a practice that we do with kids and adults, and we explain to them that this is connected to the brain. We just talked about the amygdala in prefrontal cortex in hippocampus. When you are about to do something stressful and your amygdala is on fight, flight, freeze mode, your prefrontal cortex can't really work well. Doing something like what we just did right now takes your amygdala from being hyperactive to being calm and allows your prefrontal cortex to work again, which is why students, when they do this before a test, for example, or first thing in the morning when they come to class, or between transitions, or after break, or after the recess, what their brain is able to do is go from being everywhere, not focused to coming here. And the reason why we use the chime is because the sound of the chime is kind of universally shown to linger and works for most people when it comes to trying to follow a sound that goes from being kind of high pitched, slowly disappearing, right? That's one way that we use that. So most of our schools use either a physical chime or on our new online platform, they can just like press play and they have the sound of the chime that plays. And the reason why we ask them to focus on closing their eyes or looking down is just so that they aren't distracted. And we see that this works miracles as well. The last thing I'm going to say about the brain break before we move on is that I told you that if there were any distractions, that's okay. Because the purpose of a brain break is not to have an empty mind. It's to practice just noticing things and then bring your focus back to what the task at hand is. Let's go to the next one, Carrie. The second unit is focused more about mindfulness itself. So we teach kids how to understand mindful listening, seeing, smelling, tasting. And we go from a literal mindful tasting of, like, let's say chocolate, for example, to teaching to the kids how they can apply that in the real world. It's not just taste something and move on. It's all these mindful exercises. How can you practice them in class, in the controlled environment? But what's the benefit that your brain has by learning how to be mindful in all these ways in the outside world as well? So that's second unit. Next one. The third unit is focused more about around your mindset and how to shift from the default setting of your amygdala, which is always trying to focus on the negative, into thinking about things you are grateful for, things that you are, that are a little more optimistic, and exploring kind of the different kinds of feelings your mind and your brain can have, not just the negative one. And we kind of walk the kids through those steps through these lessons. And then the last one is, again, how can we go from within to without? And the first practice we focus on in this section is having the practice of gratitude, because we know that your brain cannot hold gratitude and hold anger at the same time. It's literally impossible. You can't hold gratitude and hold stress. So the more you practice gratitude, the more you rewire your brain to kind of run away from those negative feelings. And the next step is acts of kindness, because we know that when you perform acts of kindness, your brain releases chemicals that make you naturally positive, naturally happy. It's helpful to you, the one who's giving, but also to the ones that are receiving. And then the last step is, how can we take those practices into the community? So our current full year model, which is virtual like this, that we do with schools, includes several 90 minutes, but mostly 1 hour sessions throughout the school year on all those different topics. So when we sign up with a school, we have a 90-minute introductory session where we still focus on the brain and the brain break. And we train the teachers on that specifically, and we practice together and answer questions and have interactions, et cetera, et cetera. And once we're done with that, we typically give them some time to actually practice and use the curriculum and attempt to implement with fidelity. And then maybe a month or 6 weeks or so later, we plan the next session, which is on mindful awareness specifically. We have that for 1 hour. They have do some implementation. And then we have the next one on acts of kindness. So we go kind of that way. And we also built in a section for parents, because since our goal is to have a change of mindset and character, we want not just the teachers in the school to be aware of what MindUp is and does, but we hope that parents can also come on board. So we have a 1 hour session that is virtual as well for parents. And in addition to those trainings, we have coaching and mentoring sessions with the schools. So we do the training, and then we have a smaller team from the school, like a MindUp committee that we form. And we have a MindUp consultant and trainer who actually coaches them and supports them throughout the implementation. And we also give those schools access to our electronic version of our curriculum. Anything else on that, Carrie? You're muted.
Thank you. I did that again. The only other thing I would say is that the chime that you guys heard, we actually have those different sounds of that electronic as well that you guys can So you don't actually have to buy the chime, but we actually have it. You can buy, and we'll show you how to do that, but we actually have everything electronically for you. Yeah. I think that's really the end, and we have 10 minutes for questions, really.
Yeah, so we are ready for the questions. Now you can write it on the chat, please.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
We are ready for the questions. If you have any questions. Thank you for your effort from Amira.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, the Christmas Chronicles. Yes. So you did know who our founder is, Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
She's a woman of many talents, but I will tell you that her big passion project is really around Mind Up and giving children the tools, even with her long celebrity career.
Yeah. Okay, other than the thanks, do we have any questions?
Well, if you think about any after, oh, here's one.
Regarding the brain break
question.
activity, how long should it take? Does it depend on the student's age and how?
Yeah, so the brain break depends. So the recommended time is that it be about 3 minutes 2 times a day. But when we start, even if it's 15 seconds, it's okay. Because again, our goal is to rewire the brain. So depending on where the kid or the adult is on the spectrum, they might not be able to sit still and focus on breathing for more than 30 seconds, and that's okay. The consistency is the key. It is more important to have it every single day for only 15 to 20 seconds instead of forcing 3 minutes, but doing it like once a month. So depending on the kids, kind of where they are on the spectrum, depending on the age. In the classroom also, right? It depends on many different things. You as the teacher kind of figure out how long you want the break to last. But ideally, we aim for a goal of about 3 minutes twice a day.
And you'll see it increase, like our ages 3 to 5, our pre-K is really starting at that, like you said, Dito, the 30 seconds, and you'll see as the year goes on, the ability to be able to sit longer. This is all of our training and curriculum is directed at the teacher to give the teacher the curriculum and the training to be able to do this in the classroom with the students. So we don't actually work directly with the students. And what we will also say is, and we find this all the time, is that teachers are also now practicing the same skills that they're teaching their students. And that's why you saw one of our research studies where teacher stress was going down, because now they were practicing mindfulness and actually learning about their own brain to control their own self-management and regulation in the classroom. But no, everything we do, the coachings for the teachers, the trainings for the teachers, the lesson plans are for the teachers to then do with their kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so this answered the question that Ms. Nasha was asking, that it means that you will train some workers in school or you will train the students. So we train the teachers, that's right?
Yeah, and administrators, we actually truly believe that every adult in the school, if they can participate in the training, it's even better. Obviously, it's teachers first, but we really believe for the whole school culture to change, you want to get the head leader of the school, you want to get, if it's like the administrators or whoever, we think it's really important that everyone participates.
So it's everyone dealing with the students, you think?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we
Everyone
include
dealing
there
with the
too.
students, that's right.
I love that. Can the brain break be a dance or song? Well, we actually do have a lesson planned around mindful movement and the importance of movement, where you'll see like fun dance parties. And we have one teacher, our principal that was out of Compton. I don't know if you know Compton, but it's one of the most lowest income areas in all of the United States, that actually took her entire school, took a dance break first thing together when they got in the school, because she found that it got out their sillies. It was a fun way to bring community together. And then it was just a different way to reset the day. But we do have different activities around movement and dance and fun, really.
Yeah, so the way you want to think about this is this is a very important question, actually. So thank you for asking that. So there's this notion of a brain break, which is sometimes when a teacher, you'll be working with the kids for a long time and they're tired, you feel like, okay, let's do some movement. and we call that a brain break. That is different from the mind up brain break, because that is a brain break in the way of taking a break from the activity.
Yeah.
But it's not a brain break in the way of calming the amygdala, because think about it. If
It's
you
not
are
based on
stressed,
the neuroscience.
exactly right. If you base it on the neuroscience, if you are stressed and working and you start doing jumping jacks, is that calming your amygdala? It's not really calming your amygdala, right? So that's a very important distinction. But now to address your question more precisely, yes, you can use sounds. There are actually sounds that have been designed now with the brain in mind to make sure it actually gets to it gives you the right waves to get to calm your amygdala. So movement and sound and music and songs are very, very easily used for the brain break. But it's important to understand that a brain break with putting a hype song and jumping up and down, that's a break from maybe an activity in class, but that's not a brain break based on neuroscience as mind up teaches us.
Yeah. There is an important question because Miss Lily is school director, so she wants to know more in details how to arrange the training for teachers. So can you tell us in more details how the training is held?
Yeah, so what will happen is you guys will sign up through Aisha on our overall program, and then we will directly work with you on what works for your time zone, for your teachers, and we will book the first 90-minute session and then the 60 minutes all around your schedule. So we do customize around you, just like today, we worked with Aisha on what time zone, with our time zones, what time worked best, but we are very flexible. So as soon as you sign up for our program, we can get you in the calendar.
So it's first 90 minutes first, and then
Yeah.
the
And
60 minutes after that. So the
Yeah.
beginning is the 90 minutes. That's right?
Yeah,
Just to
exactly.
be clear with everyone. So it's first the 90 minutes. This
Yeah.
is what we start with. And then the 60 minutes is afterwards. That's right, Dido? That's right,
Yes,
Carrie?
that's the way it works. And also, we are able and willing to customize for some schools. So, for example, if based on your school schedule, you already have maybe a 90-minute block scheduled for teachers to be together, maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the school year, and you would prefer to use that time, we can also find a way to customize that for you, right? You might have to blend a couple of things. So we work around your schedule and make it work based on what makes sense for the school.
Yeah, what we gave you was the typical, but exactly that. Like we just did a training in Alaska with 3 hours to start because they had a half a day professional development set aside for their school and they wanted. So Dito got through the first two. Took 90 minutes, took a break, and then did the 60 minutes. So yeah, we are very flexible as long as we do the training with you and get through the entire curriculum, because how it works is we train and then we give you the curriculum. It's actually part of our CASEL accreditation is that we can't just give people the curriculum. You actually need to be trained in it to receive the curriculum.
Yeah, I have all the financial arrangement, Ms. Nasr. I have all the financial arrangement. Is there any assessment for kids? This question is very important. How we assess the kids to know that
Yeah,
there is a difference.
so we have an assessment toolkit that the kids and the teachers can use to kind of track their growth throughout implementing MindUp. It heavily relies on the teacher because they're the ones who have to lead that and make sure that the kids fill the form and the teachers fill the form too. In addition to that, during our coaching session and support session with the schools, we often determine what is the best way for the school to assess the impact of MindUp. So some schools decide to say, okay, we're going to work with the school counselor to see if there are fewer referrals, if there are fewer behavioral issues, if there's more pro-social behavior and things like that. But the key in this, I mean, I cannot stress this enough, the key is in practice with consistency. This is not something that works because you did it. It's like exercising. You don't get in shape because you went to the gym one time for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, right? It's better for you to go every day for 6 months, only for 15 minutes every day, as opposed to 3 hours for 1 month. No, it doesn't work that way. So you really have to practice because, again, think about the brain. You want to rewire the brain. If you do a little bit, then you stop. Then when you start again, you have to pick up where you left off. So when it's consistent, it has more chances of working. And then the schools, many schools practice brain breaks as an entire school. I have principals who get on the intercom and actually start do a brain break with everybody in the beginning of the day or during assemblies, in addition to the teachers having the curriculum to teach in class.
Mhm. That's right. Do you have any other questions? I just send my email to everyone if you want anything, and we'll send you, of course, the recording of today. So I don't see any other questions. So if you have any other questions, you can still send us, and I'll send them to Carrie and Dido. And thank you very much for the wonderful webinar. And I'm sure that lots of people will be interested, and as I was interested. And thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Excellent. On behalf of Dido and I, thank you so much, Aisha, and
Thank
everyone
you.
for attending. We hope that
And
with some of you, we'll be able to, work directly with your schools and classes. We're really looking forward to it.
yeah, and thank you very much for everyone who attended. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Like,
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.